Dear 11, dear grade 12 students, how are you doing? I hope you're all okay. So far, we did up to chapter 5, book 2, electricities, and today we're going to do chapter 6. If you remember, after the trial of Charles Darnay and the meeting he had at the restaurant with Sidney Carton, and Sidney Carton told him that he didn't like him particularly. And Sidney Carton, when he went back home, crying, wetting his pillowcase because he thought that he is a loser. He can't do anything. Well, he is just, although he is more intelligent than Mr. Stryver, but he is his assistant, like a jackal to the lion. The lion is Mr. Stryver, the famous lawyer, and Sidney Carton acting as his assistant. Chapter 6, titled Hundreds of People. The summary of the chapter. 4 months have passed since the trial, Charles Darnay's trial, and Mr. Lorry, Charles Darnay, and Sidney Carton have become regular visitors at the Manette's home in Soho. Soho is a place in London where Mr. Manette, his daughter Lucy, stay with Miss Pross, Lucy's governess. Miss Pross was Lucy's governess. She was responsible for Lucy, although lives. The three of them, Mr. Manette, Lucy, and Miss Pross, lived in Soho or this place. While there one Sunday, Mr. Lorry and Miss Pross discussed the numerous suitors. There were 3 suitors for Lucy's hand: Mr. Stryver, the lawyer, Charles Darnay, and Sidney Carton, and the progress of Dr. Manette's recovery. And Darnay tells a story of a prisoner in the Tower of London who wrote the word dig on a wall. This story is the story of Dr. Manette himself. Years later, when workmen found the old cell in the Bastille, they dug into the floor beneath the inscription, the word dug written on the wall, and found ashes of a paper inside a leather case. Dr. Manette reacts badly to this story, jumping because it reminded him of what he had written that time, as if startled and looking ill. Later in the evening, as the group drinks tea and listens to the rain, they hear the echoes of people's footsteps from other streets. Lucy shares the fancy she has sometimes that the echoing footsteps are the echoes of all the footsteps that are coming by and by into our lives. Sidney Carton comments that by the sound of the footsteps, there will be a great crowd coming one day into our lives. The analysis of this chapter, it's a long chapter, guys. It's about 9 pages. You need to read the chapters from your soft copy. Please make sure you read the chapters. This is just a summary for you. Dickens refers to the doctor's imprisonment twice in this chapter. First, in the discussion between Mr. Lorry and Miss Pross, and then in the doctor's response to Darnay's story. Both incidents are reminders that the reasons behind the imprisonment are still a mystery. Nobody knows why Mr. Manette spent about 18 years in prison. Nobody knows so far. The doctor is keeping secret who imprisoned him and why. The doctor's startled response to Darnay's story indicates that he may have left a clue to his imprisonment in the cell where he was kept. He may have left the answer to this question: who and why? Who imprisoned him and for what reason? Dickens also makes clear to the reader that Lucy serves as the emotional center of the novel. The emotional center of the novel is Lucy. Her father likes her. Mr. Lorry likes her. Miss Pross likes her. Darnay, Carton, and Stryver like her. All the people around, she is the emotional center. All the people around her love her in a way or another. Earlier in the book, he described her as a golden thread running through the doctor's life and keeping him sane. Similarly, in this chapter, Dickens states that everything turned upon her and revolved about her. Everything turned about or upon her character and revolved about her, suggesting that her sphere of influence extends beyond her father and encompasses all who come in contact with her. Whoever sees her, loves her, or falls in love with her, men and women, old and young. Lucy's effect on people indicates that she is the golden thread running through the entire novel, not her lives or her father's life only. She possesses some quality that draws people to her and inspires them to be more than they are. For instance, her father has become more than a shoemaking prisoner, and Mr. Lorry has become more than a businessman. Similarly, Darnay and Carton both appear to be courting Lucy, okay, demonstrating a desire to advance their lives from a bachelorhood to marriage. Okay, as the book progresses, her influence on them will become evident in increasingly dramatic ways. Because, as you know, Carton will sacrifice his life for her, making Lucy a rather two-dimensional character, so central to the book may seem strange. But keep in mind that Dickens created Lucy to be an ideal rather than a real woman. She represents all that is good in humanity: innocence, kindness, faith, and hope, and she serves as a touchstone for other characters to find those qualities within themselves. Her premonition, her prediction at the end of the chapter that she hears the echoes of the footsteps of those who will enter their lives, along with Carton's statement that crowds of people will be entering their lives, imply that these higher qualities of humanity will be challenged in the future. We have a couple of glossary words here. The lower regions in any home in London at that time, the area of house where servants often resided or slept or stayed, and where one could find the kitchen. Sons and daughters of Gaul. Gaul is the ancient name of France, as you know. So sons and daughters of Gaul is French people. A fit of the jerks, an epileptic seizure, a fit of the jerks. The Tower of London. It's a fortress made up of several buildings on the Thames in London, where the English government held criminals charged with high crimes. Footpad, a highwayman who travels by foot or on foot. Now let's go to chapter 7, summary and analysis. A reception, a reception is a party where there is food and drink. At the Parisian, we go back to Paris now. So there is a feast or a reception at the Parisian suite of Monseigneur, a French lord. The Monseigneur is a French lord, an important person. Showcases this reception shows the excesses and superficiality of the French aristocracy. Okay, the Marquis Saint Evremond angrily, remember this name, this is Darnay's uncle, leave the reception after being snubbed, insulted by the other guests, and treated coldly by Monsieur. Monseigneur. As his driver carouses recklessly, drinks and sings through the Paris street, not paying attention to his carriage, the carriage accidentally runs over a child and killed him. The Marquis shows no remorse for the child's death. He didn't care. And when Gaspard, the child's grief-stricken father, Gaspard, remember this name, approaches the carriage, the Marquis throws him a coin, just a coin, the price for killing his son. Defarge emerges, remember Monsieur Defarge and Madame Defarge, emerges from the crowd and comforts Gaspard. And the Marquis throws him a coin as well. So the Marquis throws a coin at the child's father, Gaspard, at the beginning. And when Defarge went to comfort the father, the Marquis threw him another coin. The carriage begins to move on, and one of the peasants throws a coin back into the carriage. Angered, the Marquis threatens the crowd and then drives away. It was Defarge who threw the coin back in the carriage. Dickens uses the Monseigneur's perception to display the extravagances of the French aristocracy and to emphasize how unnatural the members of the French upper class have become. Aristocrats such as the Monseigneur have become so immersed in the spectacle of the fancy ball that they have lost touch with reality. They place themselves at the center of the world, above God and above vocation. The Monseigneur spurns the supremacy of God. For instance, when he replaces the Lord with Monseigneur. In the biblical phrase, the earth and the fullness thereof are mine, saith the Lord. He replaces the Lord with the word Monseigneur. And when he removes his sister from a convent in order to gain money through her marriage to a wealthy member of the farmer general, a rich person who used to get taxes from the farmers. Other aristocrats pursue an empty life. Their life is empty of posturing and ignorance. They are ignorant, especially in regard to their occupations. They do nothing. Gentlemen had no idea how to be military or civil officers. And women of the ruling class cared nothing for motherhood. They didn't know how to be a good mother, how to raise their children. As with other characters throughout the book, Dickens uses physical appearance to represent the moral qualities of the French nobles. The leprosy of unreality disfigures the people attending the reception. Self-absorption, self-centered, and greed similarly disfigured their hearts and minds. Their hearts and minds were full of or filled with self-absorption and greed. The Marquis Saint-Evremond, remember this name again? Charles Darnay's uncle. Remember, Charles Darnay's family name now is Darnay, though his uncle's family name is Evremond. Why? We'll see later. With his attractive face like a fine mask that changes to look treacherous and cruel, represents all that is evil in the French aristocracy. Okay? If the aristocracy, the noble people, or the nobles, does not care about God or about finding meaning in their lives, they certainly will give no thought of the lives of the lower classes. Okay? The incident with the Marquis and the child, when the Marquis's carriage ran over a child and killed him, illustrates this disregard for the common people. They didn't care about the common people. By believing he can pay for a child's life, just a coin, like a piece of merchandise, as if he bought a pen or a pencil or something like that. The Marquis reveals himself to be heartless and supremely arrogant, vain. Meanwhile, the silent challenge offered by Defarge and Madame Defarge and Gaspard himself at the scene suggests that the people's tolerance for such cruel treatment is near the breaking point. There will be a turning point about this silence. Glossary, escutcheon. Escutcheon is the shield on which a family displays its crest. A shield. The Mary Stuart who sold it, this is Charles II, farmer general, a member of a rich organization that made a living of high taxes. Convulsionists, members of a religious group with physical practices similar to the Shakers or the Holy Rollers. Cataleptic, having a condition in which consciousness and feelings seem to be temporarily lost and the muscles become rigid. Okay, finger post, a sign post. Dervishes, you know, darwish in Arabic, dervishes, members of any of various Muslim religious groups dedicated to a life of poverty and chastity. Some dervishes practice whirling, they whirl around themselves, chanting and the like as religious acts. Palace of the Tuileries, or Tuileries, it's French word, where the French king and queen lived in Paris. The now or the then Champs-Élysées Palace. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.